Good morning. That's a hard act to follow. How beautiful. I'm on the road with my husband, Ty. We were just at a smaller church last Sunday, and it was so different because they must have had this rule that you can't clap in church. And I said, "Oh, Ty, nobody's clapping." He says, "Look," and they're all going. You could hear this little shh sound. It was so cute. I am so happy. There are a few here I've talked to already who drove some extra miles just to be here this morning. I'm so grateful for that. My husband Ty and I left home 5 months ago, and we drove 11,000 miles to be here this morning. So you might see our little camper out in the parking lot out there. Oh, I'm so thrilled to share with you this morning, and I love that daily word today about passion and conviction. That is my truth. My truth is my truth. We all have our own truths. I hope that my truth this morning becomes your truth. I'm here to talk to you about 3 spiritual truths, which we're all familiar with: faith, hope, and love. But from a bit of a different perspective than most of us normally speak about those 3 virtues. From the perspective of those who are now living in a reality where all they know is love. All of you are in that reality now because we're all spirit beings. We're all beautiful souls, temporarily in a body, but we tend to focus only on this reality, so we're not aware of the incredible love that surrounds us. Now, why can I speak about faith, hope, and love from the perspective of those on the other side? Because of my current work as an evidential medium. I'll explain to you what that means in just a minute, but I need you to understand how new this work is for me. You might have seen up there on the slide up there, it said Commander Giesemann. Well, for 20 years, I served as a Navy officer. My husband calls me a short timer because he did 26 years. But, yeah. It was an amazing career. I'm so proud of it. I'm so honored that I got to serve as a commanding officer. I was chosen by the Chief of Naval Operations, who's the head of the Navy, to be a special assistant. And then I was asked by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the head of the entire United States military, to be his aide-de-camp, his right-hand man, so to speak. So to be working now as an evidential medium, you think that's a little bit of a switch? Just a little. Unfortunately, that came about, as many people's spiritual transformation does, as a result of a personal tragedy for our family, the worst possible tragedy, and that was the loss of Ty's daughter, Suzanne, a sergeant in the Marine Corps, who was struck and killed by lightning while crossing a flight line at her air station. But it's okay, because of the lives we're touching. Because of that, and because of the evidence she has brought through since her passing, some of which I'll share with you as I go along here. But that's what I mean by evidential medium. I'm not satisfied to just sit with somebody and say, "Oh, your grandmother's here and she loved you very much and she died when her heart stopped beating." I'm going to give you hardcore evidence that I couldn't possibly know about that grandmother, so that you know she's still with you. And that's the core of my work, letting us all know with truth, the truth with conviction, that life is eternal, that the spirit survives the transition that we call death. So I'm going to share a couple of stories to you about how this knowledge gives us hope and takes us beyond faith to full knowing that love is eternal. I want to start with one woman who called my assistant hoping to get a reading right away because she'd had a loss and she was having trouble dealing with it. And my assistant knew that Ty and I were getting ready for this road trip. And so she told her that I had a long waiting list and she would have to wait. She called me and said, "I told her you couldn't see her." And I said, "Oh, that's a tough one, but that's the truth." Then she called me back 3 days later and she said, "Suzanne, that woman called me again, but she's crying." That got me. We're both softies, all of us. And I said, "Ty, do you mind if I give this woman a reading in the midst of all this packing?" He said, "Of course not." So the woman came over to our house. Our big coach is blocking the driveway. We're taking boxes back and forth from the house to the coach. And she walked past the coach. She came into our study and sat down with me. And I said, I have to tell you, I'm a bit distracted because of this packing that's going on, but I'll do my best to see if we can connect with whoever it is that you've lost. So I tuned in, and realizing that there's so much more than just this physical world, I shifted my consciousness and I said, whoever it is she wants to hear from, please blend your energy with me now so I can feel you. And right away, I knew why she was grieving, because I sensed a young man right here, and in my system, that's a child. And right away, I was glad I had agreed to do that reading. I said, you've lost a son. She said, yes. She was barely talking, and I said, let me see how he passed. And I saw a sign that I don't like to see a sign of. It's this. And I said, your son took his own life, didn't he? She said, yes, he did. But that's just a sign. So I said, how did you do it? Why do I ask these things? Because I want evidence. And right away I jerked and I said, he jumped off a bridge. And she said, yes. And I'm about to jump out of my chair because right away I can tell this is what I call a 5-bar reading, like a cell phone signal, right? 5 bars. So I tuned in, and we're sitting at our home in Florida, but I said, there's a New York connection here. She said, yes, there is. And I said, Brooklyn. Did he jump off the Brooklyn Bridge? And she said, no. Do you want me to tell you which bridge? And I said, no, he's telling me right now. The Verrazano Bridge. Does that go to Brooklyn? She said, yes, it does, and that's the bridge. How do you know that? And I said, because he's right here, and he's telling me he had some mental imbalances. I'm hearing bipolar and schizophrenia. And she said, yes, both. And I said, he wants you to know, I'm okay, Mom. I'm okay. I'm surrounded by love. And my medication was off. I wasn't taking my pills. This was not premeditated. And she was just soaking this up. And I knew why I was supposed to do that reading then. And she said, I know. I think his girlfriend kept his pills from him. And I heard a first name and a last name, Dr. So-and-so. I'm not going to share it with you now. And she said, that's his psychologist who prescribed the pills. If a cell phone had more than 5 bars, that would have been what that reading was. I said, he's talking about somebody named James. She said, oh, it's his best friend. I said, well, James plays the guitar. She said, yeah. And I said, in a band. Your son was in a band with James. She said, yes. It's like a phone call from heaven, my friends. I said, what did you play? He played the drums. Yes, he did. I said, Mikey. She said, that's him. This was one of those kind of readings that I pray for. They're not all that good. But boy, when the connection is that good, it is so healing. And one of the bits of evidence I love to hear right up front, but I hadn't heard yet, was what kind of work did he do? That's something I couldn't possibly know. So without opening my mouth, I said to him, what did you do? And I saw a hand sweep out in front of me, and it pointed out the window of my study to our coach sitting in front of the driveway. And he said to me, what your husband is doing now. And I looked out the window, and Ty is kneeling down at the trailer hitch at the back of the coach where we tow our Honda, and he's stripping wires. And I looked at his mom, and I said, your son was an electrician. And she said, yes, he was. Now, do you see how important that was? Any of you could think, oh, she's just reading her client's mind. Did her client know that I asked him what he did? Did her client know to say what he's doing out there? Her back was to the window. Folks, that is not telepathy. That is the eternal soul of that young man who may have taken his own life, but is not burning in hell. He was right there, surrounded by love, to tell his mom, I'm okay. And then he said, tattoos, talk about the tattoos. So I did. And his mother started to roll up her sleeve. And I said, but there's something about song lyrics here. And she rolled her sleeve up all the way, and there was a tattoo that she and his friend James both had done after he passed with his favorite song lyrics on it. So that was one of those readings that just changes lives, and I know it changed her life. She looked at me and she said, can you ask him a question? I said, sure. She said, ask him if I still need to be on these antidepressants. I already knew the answer, but I tuned in, and the answer was a little startling, and I said it to her exactly as he said it, in a little bit of coarse words about what she could do with those pills. And she looked at me, she said, that's what I think, and that's exactly the way he would have said it. So she left that room a totally different person than she came in. And in fact, she walked down the driveway as Ty was coming back in for another box. Do you remember what she said?
She smiled and said, I'm happy now.
She smiled and said, I'm happy now. She had come in there with just hope, with faith that maybe this mediumship stuff was real, and she left knowing that love was eternal. That is my favorite kind of reading, where you can show a parent that their child is still with them. But I've come to learn that I shouldn't place so much importance on any one relationship, because I've learned that there are people who had a relationship with their parents or with a spouse that is every bit as important as any other relationship. And I learned this lesson, and quite a few other lessons, which I'll share with you, from this woman who called me and was so insistent, I need a reading now, quite different from the lady that was crying. In fact, I gave her the reading right away, kind of so she would not keep calling me. She was a bit of a pest. So we gave a phone reading to her, and it's just the same as being in person. Why? Because consciousness, the spirit, is everywhere at once. It's not like they have to come from a far-off heaven. They're around you now. So I tuned in on the phone to see who it was this woman wanted so badly to hear from. And I didn't sense a child. I didn't sense she'd lost a spouse. I didn't sense a mother. I didn't sense a father. You know what I sensed? A dog. But then I thought, well, my dogs are like my children. Okay, I said, there's a little dog here. She said, oh, that's one of the beings I wanted to hear from. And I'm thinking, well, now I need evidence from a dog. And you know, you can tune into the soul of any creature because it's all love at the essence. And I said, this dog is showing me a carriage. There's something important about a carriage. And on the other end of that phone, she gasped and she said, you could not have said anything more important. That dog was paralyzed from the waist down and ran around in a little carriage. And I got a few more things from the dog about, oh gosh, he had a blue ribbon, for example. So the dog was great, and I said, well, do we have any other human beings here? And I said, there is a man here. He's a brother to your father. She said, that's who I wanted to hear from. And I'm thinking to myself, really? An uncle and a dog, and you were so insistent? Okay, who am I to judge? So I tuned into this gentleman, and I'm thinking, well, maybe because she loved him so much, but the way this man felt, I had a little trouble believing that, because I said, I have to tell you, this gentleman who's here, he had a real hard time showing love, because I don't feel it now, and he's still not showing it too clearly. He's just kind of standing there. In fact, he was really cranky when he was alive, wasn't he? And she said, oh, yes. And I said, in fact, do you all know the word curmudgeon? This is the man, this is what I felt. An important lesson for all of us. You don't become spiritual as soon as you pass over. If you're grumpy here, you're going to be grumpy there. So word to the wise, grow your angel wings while you're here. Take it with you. That's why you're here. So I got some good evidence from that man. A few things that my client couldn't verify. For instance, this uncle was talking about these two big men's rings. She said, I don't know about any ring like that. And I said, well, just take a note of it. Ask your dad about it if you can, because this ring is really important. And he's talking about some name that sounds like Darcy. And she went, oh, that's big. Okay. So the reading ended, and she seemed a little dissatisfied, so I felt a little off myself, especially because I had thought, an uncle and a dog? Well, I want to share with you an email that woman sent to me after her reading. And it kind of changed everything for me, the way that reading changed everything for her. She wrote, when I shared the details of this reading with my dad, it affected him on a deep and profound level. When the name Darcy came up in regard to my uncle, well, this name for his daughter is something no one outside our family has ever known. It's a family secret, never even whispered about. When I told my father this, he cried. I don't think I've ever seen him cry before. Wow. He went into his room and just laid on the bed for 3 hours, something else he has never done before. And she later explained to me the thing that really got him was those rings. He went in his bedroom, brought out a jewelry box, and showed his daughter 2 rings, one that was his brother's and one that was his, given to them both by their mother. He had never told his daughter about these rings. Once again, not telepathy. I'm not reading her mind. It was coming from that uncle, and obviously that got through to his brother. As I mentioned, I care for my father in my home. He is 89 years old. It has been difficult to watch him age. Cancer, heart attacks, stroke, and more. I could always feel his fear of death and wanted to help him to stop his suffering. I've always felt in my heart that there's no reason to fear death, that something incredibly beautiful, a pure love beyond human comprehension awaits us, but I could never prove it. Now I have all the evidence I need. It has opened his heart, I believe, to a miracle that will bring him peace and comfort as he transitions from this physical reality. And I sat back and I thought a reading for an uncle wouldn't be important. But it got even better than that. A few months later, after I had long moved on to other readings, I got another email from that same woman. You may not remember my reading. How am I going to forget that one? But you were correct. My uncle was, quote, a man who didn't know how to give or show love. He was a man who suffered greatly and saw little joy in his life. Don't we all know somebody like that? My father was his twin in every way. Since I shared the messages from your reading with my father, he has shown signs of opening his heart. The most recent was just the other evening. As we were sitting in the living room watching one of his favorite programs, he turned the sound off and said to me, "Did you see the beautiful sunrise this morning? The sky had such a pretty pink color in it." Now, I know this may seem like a small thing to most people, but I remember throughout my lifetime looking up into the sky and filled with awe and wonder, sometimes with tears in my eyes, saying to my father what a gloriously beautiful sunrise it was. His reply, without ever looking up, would be to grumble, roll his eyes, and say, "For God's sake, Sherry, haven't you ever seen a sunrise before?" Over these past few years, as I've watched my father age and his health fail, it has been my greatest wish to show him there is such beauty and joy and love and wonder in this life. My messages have never really seemed to get through to him. His brothers did. You helped my 89-year-old father to see the sunrise, truly see the sunrise for the first time in his life. Wow. And that's why if you go on my website, you see the tagline about this work I do. I have been called a messenger of hope. What an honor. It was an incredible honor to serve at the level of military that I did. But this work is a service beyond any I ever imagined. One of our first stops on this tour was at another Unity Church in North Carolina, a small one. They said we could park our coach in their lot as well, and we parked right next to a labyrinth. You all know what labyrinths are? I was so excited. I said, "Ty, after dinner I'm going out and walk that labyrinth." So I did, and I started walking very slowly and giving thanks for this ability to be able to go on the road and share these messages. And I didn't get too far before I looked down, and there at my feet was this little red token, kind of like you'd put on a dog's collar with their name, but it was in the shape of a heart. And it had the word love written on it. That was amazing to find that there. And I picked it up and I thought, this is beautiful. This is what we're doing. We're taking the love on the road. And for a moment, I contemplated putting that in my pocket and taking it as a memento to help me remember that special moment of walking the labyrinth. And then I thought, no, love is meant to be carried forward. And my website is loveatthecenter.com. So I thought, I'm going to carry this forward to the center of this labyrinth. So I walked around very slowly, got to the very center of that labyrinth. And I kneeled down and I put it on the ground like this. And as I did that, I flashed back to the last time that I kneeled down in this exact same position. And it was the worst moment of my life. It was when we visited the tarmac at the flight line where Suzanne was struck, where she took her last breath. And I just wanted to touch that spot. And at that moment, all I could have was hope that her spirit still survive. All I could have was faith that we could somehow connect with our daughter again. Because at that time, I had no idea there was a spirit world. And that was only 8 years ago. No idea. But I knew that love connected us and it could not take us apart. So we went to see a medium. And that medium knew nothing about us. Not our last name. She couldn't Google us. And she sat for a while and she said, you know, there's a young woman here. She's in a brown uniform. She appears to be in her 20s, and she died rather suddenly. In fact, I suddenly had the headache of Zeus and Athena. Do you know who Zeus was? The god seen holding a lightning bolt. And if you remember, our Susan was struck by lightning. And I'm sobbing now, because that's a lot different than saying your grandmother's here and she loved you very much. And she said, and now your daughter has stepped in front of you, sir, and she's climbed onto your lap, and she's put her arms around your neck and her head on your shoulder, and she's saying, Daddy, Daddy. And both of us have so many memories of our tough-as-nails sergeant, who was Daddy's girl in every way, climbing onto his lap, even at age 27, 29, the last time we saw her, doing that exact thing. So both of us were crying then, because we knew then, love never dies. But what really got us, what put it over the top, what that medium couldn't possibly have known, was when she said, oh, but wait, there's somebody else here with her. It's a little baby boy who's standing back shyly, sucking his thumb as if he doesn't know you, and she wants to introduce him to you. What that medium couldn't have known was that our Susan was 6 months pregnant with a baby boy. Do you see how this changes lives? Do you see why we're on the road and dedicating this to our Susan? I hope that what my truth is, my conviction, my passion, sharing the evidence with all of you has helped to take you from just faith to knowing in your hearts where all truth lives, that life is eternal, that life goes on, that this is, as Joel Goldsmith said, a parenthesis in eternity. And what's it all about? It's about loving each other. Can you do that? If you do that, you graduate from this school of life with honors. And you don't come back to a medium to tell your loved ones, I'm sorry, you say it now. And you come back through a medium feeling so beautiful, so full of love, not grumpy and crabby, but showing the world that you learned your lessons while you were here, that it's all about loving each other. Just open your heart and send it out. That's why you're here. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.